Hi, I'm Beverly Harzog, host of Your Personal Economy. You can't control what goes on in the world in terms of groceries or inflation, but you can control your own personal economy because the way you spend your money is the way you spend your life. And I want you to have the best life ever. My special guest today is Liz Weston. She's a national author, a bestseller. She's written so many books. I have so many of them on my bookcase. I can't even list them all. Liz, I could spend 20 minutes just talking about all your credentials. I know that you're also a CFP. You recently just left NerdWallet, and you have a website called Ask Liz Weston, and it's a great site where people can ask you questions. And, I was just on your website and I noticed that you mentioned a mistake that you made. Now, in my first in my first two episodes of Your Personal Economy, I talked about my book Confessions of a Credit Junkie. And this book, you actually wrote the intro for me. And that really got my start in books, and I will always be grateful to you for that. You've been such an influence for
Oh,
me
that's
in my
great.
career, so I'm so delighted to have you. But in the first two episodes, I talk about my top 10 credit card mistakes, and I had to break that up into two episodes. I had so many mistakes. So I thought, I'll bet Liz
I
Weston has
love it.
never made a personal finance mistake. So I'm on your website and I find this little gem. You say you bought retirement property at 26 in Alaska and it was 80 miles from the nearest road. So I have to tell you, I am so impressed you had the presence of mind to think about your retirement. When I was 26, I was getting into debt going on cruises with 10 cents in my checking account. So I'm very impressed. You still have that property?
I do. I literally cannot give it away, at least not in a way that makes sense right now. So, I mean, I was thinking about retirement, but I was thinking like a 26-year-old thinks about
Yes.
retirement. That we have this, there's something called the end of history illusion, where we think we have reached the pinnacle of our own development. And we look back 10 years and we realize we are very different people from where we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But we think somehow we've stopped. And this is true whether in your 20s, your 60s, your 80s, we all have this illusion that we've reached the peak of what we're going to be. And that's what I thought in my 20s. Oh, I'm living in Alaska now. I'm dating a police officer who I'm going to marry. We should buy property together. And he was a pilot. I was a pilot. We could fly out to it. I don't know what I was thinking. We're going to be flying out there when we're 80. I wasn't thinking is the point. So bought this property, still have it. There's still not a road to it, but it did teach me that you shouldn't make too many decisions for your future self other than to give your future self some wiggle room. So that's why we save for retirement. Maybe we don't buy retirement property in our 20s.
Still, I'm quite impressed that you actually did that. So you still have the property today?
I
Oh, it,
do, I do. And to give it away, I would have to get it evaluated, which means flying out an appraiser. And that to me, that's just not something I want to deal with right
so if
now.
anybody wants to make an offer, they can contact you at Ask Liz Weston.
There you go.
You've just left NerdWallet, and you've got an exciting adventure ahead of you. And would you like to tell us a little bit about that? I know that you get a lot of questions about Social Security um, on your website, Ask Liz Weston. So, what kind of questions do you get about that?
Oh, wow. Social Security has turned into this big area of interest for me and for my readers. And it was one of those things where I just answered one question and then a billion followed. And that has continued. And it's amazing because Social Security is something that just about everybody will be using in retirement. A lot of people will rely on it heavily. A fraction of people will rely on it for all of their income. And yet the program itself is so unbelievably complicated. It's so hard to keep all the rules straight. And I think the best thing you can do really as you're approaching retirement is try to educate yourself, obviously, but I would definitely get a second opinion about your claiming strategy. Because yes, you do have to have a strategy. You have to figure out when to claim. And if you are thinking of grabbing the money early, then you definitely want to get a second opinion because most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, that is the wrong call, but that's what people do. They think I'm going to grab it
Hmm.
now while I can.
Yeah, there definitely has to be a strategy. When I think back, to my 20s and 30s, I really wasn't thinking about retirement. So I was not where you were buying property.
Live for today,
But,
yeah.
today, so many people live paycheck to paycheck. Now, I follow this survey that Lending Club does every single year, and it's pretty consistent. It's either 60 or 61% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. Now, in your book, The 10 Commandments of Money, you talk a lot about this and how to stop living paycheck to paycheck. For somebody that's, say, in their 20s and 30s, maybe they're thinking, I really do need to save for retirement, so I have options later. I think a lot of us don't do traditional retirements, but we want to do something else. We want to do something we want to do. Okay. So, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Have the
what
freedom
kind
to
of
do what you
advice do you
want.
have for somebody who is living paycheck to paycheck? Where can they find a little bit extra money so they can also set aside something for that?
Yeah, it's really difficult when you get into that bind because then anything that goes wrong, bang, you're in debt again. So, and people define paycheck to paycheck differently, but I'll just say you are stressed about money because you don't have that
Hmm.
wiggle room. And one of the things we did at NerdWallet was try to popularize the 50-30-20 budget. And one of the key pieces is to keep your must-have expenses. Those are the ones that you can't skip. You have to pay every month. Keep those to 50% of your after-tax income. And the first time I did the little back of the envelope, I think we were up to 80% of our after-tax income was must-have. So the way to it's not something that you're going to necessarily land on and be comfortable with right away. You're going to have to make some adjustments. We had to cut some expenses. We had to look for some ways to earn more money. And a lot of times the best way out is to earn your way out if you possibly can. If that means, a second job or a sideline, if that means asking for a raise at work, if that means a different job. A lot of times it's much easier to do it that way than to try to keep cutting expenses that already might be cut to the bone. And there are a few people that are just really stuck. They are disabled. They don't have a lot of income coming in. In that case, cutting the budget can be the way to go, or cutting expenses. But a lot of times, trying to earn more money is the way to go.
I completely agree. When I was in my 20s and I had a lot of debt, I finally got to a point where, okay, this has to stop. I need to get myself back on track. I started studying personal finance. I'd go to the library, I'd read books, I'd read magazines, I did everything I could to try to educate myself so I'd know how to get out of debt. And I finally decided that the best way to get out of debt, I mean, other than cutting out things that, were wants and not needs, was to get a new job. And that's what I did. I got a new job that paid probably about 30% more than my current job. And that was
Wow.
huge for me. It really took away a lot of my stress. But, I always tell people, especially women, get your worth. Okay. You can kind of look around the market, do a little bit of research, and see if you think you're underpaid and ask for what you're worth. And if your current employer won't give it to you, then sometimes you have to look outside your current employer. And so, yeah, I love that advice because it's just so important to, try to increase your income if you possibly can. So that's really good advice. And I also noticed with the Lending Club survey that 4 out of 10 were actually high income earners. And so I think for,
Mm.
a lot of people, does this sound like maybe, they just need to budget and track their expenses? Sometimes people forget about the basics of, good money management.
Yeah, I think we have this idea that more money will make it better. And people have different ideas of where the figure is, but the reality is inflation, lifestyle inflation happens. You make more money, you start to spend
Mhm.
more money. That's just natural. And I mean, remember, Beverly, none of us were born knowing this stuff. We all learn it, and we all learn it by making mistakes a lot of the times. So people really beat themselves up about not knowing more about money. Well, where would you
Mhm.
find out? Now is the time to start educating yourself, and listening to this podcast is a really great way to do it. But there are a lot of resources out there that can help you sort of put things together and figure out how to
Mhm.
make this all work. But as you said, a big key to this is your income, and many people, women especially, are not trained in how to negotiate. And I actually started with my daughter when she was very young. She was supposed to do certain chores around the house, and if she wanted to earn extra money, she could do extra chores, and we would negotiate how much she would get paid. And if she made an offer and I accepted, she knew she'd made a mistake. She'd bid too low. So this is a process that I'm really glad I taught her. Sometimes it really came back to bite me, but I think it was a good thing to learn because it's not something that I learned growing up. And it took a
Mhm.
while to get that under my belt that, yeah, if you want more, you
Mhm.
have to ask for more.
I love that. I really love that. That is a great idea. I wasn't taught that either. So, it was, as I went through life, I started realizing I had to develop that skill, and so that's really good advice. Yeah.
Well, and you had to get over beating
Mhm.
yourself up too. I think people get that far and then they stop. They don't want to deal with money because it brings up all
Mhm.
these bad feelings, and kind of have to push through that to get to the point where you are making, even if it's little tiny steps towards financial health, and you can build on that. You just have to get started
That's
somewhere.
right. And one thing I've always said is credit is not intuitive. I think credit in particular, sometimes on the surface, it doesn't even make sense, because people think, okay, I can close out my credit card and that will improve my score. And, if you think about it, that kind of makes sense, but that's not how it works.
No, I've long said that money really isn't rocket science, but credit
Mhm.
scoring formulas, those are. That's absolute rocket science, and it doesn't always make sense to the consumer because they were never meant for us. In fact, when they were created, we weren't meant to even see them.
That's
This was
right.
supposed to be going on in secret
Yes.
behind the scenes, you
Yes, I
remember.
do remember.
And it was quite a big deal when you could first find out what
Oh,
your credit
yes,
score
yes.
was.
Yeah, and now it's so easy to find your credit score, for free. I mean, most credit card
Hmm.
issuers will let you
Yeah,
see it, and, I always say don't obsess about your credit score, but do follow it to make sure it's going in the right direction at least. Yeah.
absolutely. And people need to know there are many, many, many
Yes.
credit scores. I mean, we were raised with the phrase. In fact, my book is called, the first one is
Mhm.
called Your Credit Score. In reality, we have many of them and they
That's
change all the
right. I
time.
have it right
So
here.
you need to at least monitor. Oh, there you go. And you need to monitor at least one of them. I mean, you
Mhm.
can't monitor all of them. There's just too many. And like I said, they change
Right.
all the time. But having at least one, and your bank may offer it, your credit card company may offer it. You can sign up online. Many sites like NerdWallet
Mhm.
offer it for free.
Yeah, yeah, NerdWallet is a great resource. When I worked at US News& and World Report, I wrote a lot about credit scores, and, it's amazing, how complicated that is, and, one thing that I have spent my entire career trying to bust a particular myth, and that's that you don't have to carry a balance to earn a good credit score. And at US News, just about every year, we would run a survey and ask questions, if people believe that. And every time, a significant portion would believe that. And so I just,
Yeah.
I think, okay, I just have to keep saying it.
That book that you're holding went
Mhm,
through 5 editions, and the only chapter that didn't change
mhm.
significantly was the one on credit scoring myths.
Wow.
So the myth that checking your own credit hurts your credit, the myth that carrying a balance is necessary for good credit, all of those things just seem to hang on. And the good news is, fewer and fewer believe
Mhm,
that. I think every year, I think we're getting the message out. But yeah, for a large, I mean, for most of the population, they're getting the right information, but there's still a big chunk that's still
mhm.
working on bad assumptions or bad information. And that can really have an effect because if you're carrying a balance, you're paying a lot of money
Oh,
for it typically.
absolutely. That compound interest, I like to say it's evil. Not not with the savings account, it's great, but with credit card balances, I mean, it just makes your balance increase so rapidly. It's shocking how fast it will
Yes.
grow.
Yeah, and there's two things that can keep you poor, and one is credit card
Mhm,
balances, and the other is the car you buy. What's in your driveway can have a huge impact on how much money you have left over. So, come back to that 50
mhm,
30 20 budget. The 50% is the must-haves, the 30% is the wants, the 20% is savings and extra debt payments. But if you can keep your must-have expenses, including your housing, your transportation, food, utilities, all that stuff, minimum loan payments under 50%, you're going to have so much more wiggle room. And it can take you a while to get there, but you can get there.
Yeah, that's a great formula. I've used that myself. And, one thing I did when I needed to, cut out some expenses, because I don't believe that someone should just give up everything they love. Okay. Because in my experience, that doesn't work. I once gave up chocolate.
Not for long, yeah.
I once gave up
Oh,
chocolate for like 3 weeks,
harsh.
and then I just binged on chocolate. So I find that these things really don't work. You need to have a few little treats. So if we could talk about financial self-care just a little bit, one thing that I do is I have a budgeted splurge. So I have a line item in my budget that allows me to get a pedicure every 2 weeks, because yeah,
There
I
you go.
treat myself. I can afford that with my cash flow and my current income, and that works for me. So I encourage everybody to just have, something like that, in their budget to treat yourself. Do you have something like that in your budget?
Well, one of the things I like to do is make sure that there's plenty of money for travel, because that's something that is really important to my husband and I. He teaches workshops overseas, so we tend to spend quite a bit of time over there, and I really love that. Pedicures, I'm there with you. It's just too hard to do your own toenails and make them look good. But just having any kind of little treat that's not breaking the bank.
Mhm.
And lattes used to get such crap that lattes were ruining your budget. And yeah, if you're buying a latte every day, that's a lot of money that you could be saving.
Mhm.
But once in a while, we need little treats to keep us going, for sure.
Absolutely. And, I just started downsizing my expenses. Like,
Mm,
I remember when I was really, really in credit card debt, I had an expensive health club membership. Nobody needs that. Okay.
for sure. Check out
And
your
and
local
plus
Y.
it was a status thing for me.
Hmm.
And I thought, "I don't need this, but I
Yeah,
do need to exercise because debt is stressful."
yeah.
So I canceled my membership and I started going to a local gym in my neighborhood to take aerobics classes. And so I saved a lot of money that way. So
Oh,
you don't
yeah.
have to give up everything, but you can downsize your expenses a little bit, and that can help you either get out of debt or just stay on track.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the gym membership is sort of the typical example of one of those things that we sign up for with the best
Mhm,
intentions and then
mhm.
just never use. And I wanted to put in a pitch for your local YMCA or YWCA because
Good
it's
idea.
very affordable. They typically have gyms and equipment and classes, and it's a great way to stay in shape or simply go for a walk, get out in nature. That can help too.
Exactly. That's what I do now. I don't have a health health club membership anymore, but I do have an exercise room in my house. So I kind of set myself up so that I can always exercise. I live near a greenway that we have here in the Atlanta area, so I can walk on trails out in the woods. It's great. It's
Oh,
great, and
yeah.
it's all free. I mean, I
Yes.
guess I pay taxes for it, but still.
Well, and I love Donna Friedman's site, Surviving and Thriving. If
Oh,
you
I do
need
too.
ideas for frugality, boy, she is
Mhm.
the woman to check in on because she knows her stuff. She's pretty awesome.
Yes, yes, I agree. Donna Freeman. Yes, she's great. Um, when we were talking about paycheck to paycheck, living paycheck to paycheck, uh, you know, it's really important that people start investing as soon as they possibly can. Now, I know that you're a CFP, and I was wondering if you had just some tips for somebody maybe in different stages, maybe somebody starting out with investing, maybe they don't have a lot. Just maybe they've got like $1,000 that they can invest. And then maybe somebody in their 30s and 40s, what's a good thing for them to keep in mind?
Yeah. Well, we were actually just talking about this last night. A group of girlfriends went to the Walt Disney Hall for an organ concert that was absolutely wonderful. But
Oh,
before, we were
nice.
having a picnic lunch or picnic dinner
Mhm.
and talking about how we got involved with our 401ks. And in every case, it was somebody at work who leaned over and said, sign up for this thing. So, and we did it because we didn't know any better and it seemed like the right thing to do. And none of us understood investing when we signed up for our 401k. In fact, when my 401k balance went down, I thought it was something my company had done to me. I didn't understand the stock market at all. But But there was that one person, and if you can be that one person for somebody else, just say, hey, go sign up for the 401k. Because if you have a 401k at work, that is the best way to get started investing, hands down. Typically, there's free money they're going to give you to contribute, and you can learn as you go. You don't have to understand investing before you get started. You just want to start sucking that money away. If you don't have a 401k at work, then an IRA will work. You can set that up anywhere. You can set it up at Vanguard or T. Rowe Price or Schwab or one of the other discount brokerages. Just, set it up, start putting money in regularly, and pick an index fund. And what an index fund is something that just mimics the market. Or you can do something called a target date retirement fund. And that basically is you figure out about when you're going to be 60, 65, however far that is in the future, and you invest in that. So if it's, I'm having to do the math really quickly, but if your retirement is 40 years out, then it would be the 2065 target date retirement fund. And that fund does everything for you. It does all the heavy lifting. It figures out what to invest in. It rebalances it. It makes it go more conservative the closer you get to your target, your retirement date, which is exactly what you want. So take it, do the easy way. Don't try to learn everything about investing before you put your first dollar down. Use retirement funds because those are the best way to get started. You need to have retirement money anyway. And then once you got that set up and you're contributing enough, and there's lots of calculators out there to help you figure out how much is enough for retirement. If you want to invest extra on the side, that's great. You can set up brokerages account. You can play with Bitcoin or cryptocurrency if you want, whatever else. That will be your fun money. But your basic hardcore retirement funds should be in retirement accounts, and you should be contributing to them regularly before you do all that other stuff.
Oh, that's great advice. And, with 401ks, I've always recommended if your company offers that and they match, please take advantage of that. That's free money. I mean,
Yes.
please do that. And, you can also look at the details of your 401k and see what they're investing in. I got more into that recently, and that was really interesting. You can learn a lot that way. And I've noticed on social media, sometimes the advice isn't the best. I think there's a big difference between an expert and an influencer.
Oh, Lord,
But I
yes.
have noticed something on social media where people are saying that a 401k is a scam. And I'm like, I don't understand where that even comes from. But, I just want to encourage everybody to please, vet your sources for information like that. Read Liz Weston's books, and you will know everything you need to know.
Well, thank you. But the social media is all about algorithms. So saying something outrageous to get eyeballs is one way to develop a following. And unfortunately, sometimes really stupid bad advice gets
Yes.
promoted that way. And the reality is your 401k is protected under something called ERISA. And this is something passed way back in the day, but it requires your employer to be a fiduciary. In other words, your employer has to put your interest first. Those influencers on social media, they're putting themselves first. They don't really care about what's going on with you. But your employer is required to be a fiduciary to put your best interest first. And that is why the 401k is typically the best start for anybody. Besides the free money, besides the fact that there's typically a very easy investment option that will take care of all the details for you, it's a great way for beginners to get started. And no, it's not a scam.
I love that advice. Thank you for clarifying all that. So, Liz, I know that you just retired from NerdWallet, and I know you're off to some new adventures. Why don't you tell us what you're going to be doing?
Okay, well, I'm still working this all out, but I have retired a little bit before the typical retirement age, and I just wanted to take maybe a 6-month break and then figure out what I'm going to do going forward. But as I said, we've got some travel in the offing. We're going to do a big house remodel, so that'll keep me busy for a while. And I'm going to continue to write my Q&A column for the Los Angeles Times and a few other newspapers, and those Q&As will show up on my site. And I do encourage people to ask questions there if they'd like, or to send me an email. I can't answer questions one-on-one because that's something a financial planner does, a financial advisor does, and I'm a journalist, so I answer in the column, I answer, more publicly. But I love getting people's questions. I love helping them out. Like I said, especially with Social Security, that's a really tough one, or their credit issues, anything to do with budgeting, getting started investing, retirement planning, all that stuff. I love helping people out with.
That's great. I share your passion for financial literacy, and that's why I've always admired your career. You have done so much to help people understand money management, and your advice is always practical. You can actually use your advice, and you can't say that about everybody. Yeah. All right. So I encourage everybody to get on asklizweston.com, ask your questions, and she's just a fabulous expert. You need to be following her and reading her books. Thank you so much for joining me today, Liz, on Your Personal Economy. I really appreciate having you here today.
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me for episode number 3, a candid conversation with best-selling author Liz Weston. Liz is one of my favorite writers, and I have many of her books. I highly recommend them. And you can ask Liz questions on her website, asklizweston.com. Coming up next, episode number 4, 31,450 reasons you need an emergency fund. Wait until you hear about what happened to me this past Thanksgiving. It's a story of turkey, a plumbing disaster, and total mayhem. Check it out.